The train let out a low, mournful whistle as it hissed to a stop in the heart of Spring Hollow. I stepped down onto the sun-baked platform, boots hitting the wood like a verdict. My hat shaded my eyes from the glare, but not from the stares. Folks had gathered, not just for arrivals, but for the spectacle they knew was coming. Mail-order grooms weren't common, especially not ones rejected before they'd even tipped their hat. I adjusted my coat and looked down the platform, heart rattling like the engine behind me. I'd written letters, sent photographs, saved months to pay the fare westward. Delilah Mays had answered them all, sweet, if a little short, but she'd agreed to marry. Said she wanted a fresh start. I did too. I just didn't expect the town to show up like they were watching a play. And then I saw her. Delilah stepped through the crowd, brown curls pinned up under a faded bluebonnet. She had the look of a woman trying not to be seen, and yet she couldn't help but be noticed. She stopped a few feet from me, clutched her gloves, and looked me square in the eye. I tipped my hat. Miss Mays. Her eyes darted to the watching crowd. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came. Her face went pale, then pink. I stepped forward, unsure whether to shake her hand or offer my arm. That's when she turned on her heel and ran. Just like that. A ripple of laughter passed through the bystanders. One man let out a low whistle. Guess he didn't pass inspection, someone muttered. I didn't look to see who. I just stood there, suitcase in hand, jaw tight, heart going still. I wanted to vanish, melt into the heat and dust, and board the next train back east, where no one knew my name or how I'd been left standing. The station master, a hunched old man named Boone, gave me a slow shake of his head as he leaned on his broom. That's a tough blow, son. I didn't answer. What was there to say? I'd written dozens of letters. I'd told her everything. About my work at the lumber camp, the loss of my younger brother to fever, the way my parents had died in a snowstorm. Maybe I was too honest. Maybe she'd seen me in person and changed her mind. Either way, I was a man who'd come west to start a new life, and now I had no bride and no place to go. I took one step toward the bench to collect my thoughts. That's when I heard the voice. Are you my daddy? It came soft, childlike, but sure. I turned around slow, not sure I'd heard right. A little girl stood at the edge of the platform in a yellow calico dress and scuffed brown boots. Her hair was the color of chestnuts and fell to her shoulders in sun-lightened tangles. She had eyes too big for her face, clear, unblinking, and locked onto me like I was the only man alive. I blinked. I'm sorry, what? She took a careful step closer. Are you my daddy? The crowd had gone quiet. Even old Boone stopped sweeping. A few ladies on the bench straightened, listening like hens waiting for gossip to hatch. I crouched instinctively, suitcase thudding beside my boot. Sweetheart, do you think I'm someone else? She frowned, thinking hard. My mama said he was tall and kind. He had eyes like river glass and a voice like gravel. I swallowed. I waited, she said. Mama said he'd come someday. You look like him. My voice caught in my throat. I didn't know what kind of game this was, or who this girl's mother was, but there was something in her face, something old, something familiar. What's your name? I asked. Clara. Clara. My brain was scrambling, piecing together every woman I'd ever known, every possibility. There was only one name that floated up with any weight. Rose. I hadn't seen her in nearly 7 years. A dark-eyed girl with laughter in her voice and grief in her bones. We'd had a spring together before I was called away. Letters stopped. Life moved. Or I thought it did. You sure I look like him? I managed. She nodded solemnly. I asked Mama once if he had a crooked tooth on the side. She said yes. She pointed to mine. You got one. I sat back on my heels. The wind shifted. Dust danced along the rails. I didn't know if I was being tricked or if some long-forgotten choice had just circled back like a ghost. Boone cleared his throat behind me. You all right, mister? I stood slowly, eyes still on the girl. I don't rightly know. Clarith slipped her hand into mine like we'd done it 100 times before. I didn't pull away. Someone chuckled in disbelief. Another muttered a prayer. But I didn't hear them. I was too busy looking down at the little girl who just might be the only thing in this town that didn't want to run from me. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't want to run either. Clara's hand was small but certain in mine as we walked the length of the platform, the murmurs behind us fading into the hum of cicadas and the soft rustle of dust beneath our boots. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't leave her standing there alone. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe it was the way she looked at me, like she'd been waiting her whole life to be found. We settled on a weathered bench beneath the awning. She swung her legs while I tried to gather thoughts scattered like straw in a storm. I offered her the lemonade I bought from the nearby stand, and she sipped it with both hands like it was the best thing she'd ever tasted. "You said your mama's name was Rose?" I asked, careful not to let too much tremble into my voice. She nodded. "Rose Whitlock, but she don't talk about you much. Just says you were brave and gone." The name hit me like a shot to the ribs. I hadn't heard it in years. Rose Whitlock. Wild hair, quick temper, and a way of laughing that made a man feel 10 feet tall. We'd had a fire between us once. I thought I'd come back to her, but war and letters lost to time had other plans. I cleared my throat. "How long's she been gone?" Clara looked down at her boots. "She got sick last winter. Fever. Widow Eleanor says she didn't suffer long." Widow Eleanor. The name tugged a thread in my memory. I'd heard in town. She took in orphans, helped with births, and wasn't one to meddle unless meddling needed doing. "She your kin?" I asked. Clara shook her head. "Mama left me with her when she got real bad. Said she trusted her. Miss Eleanor's nice, but she says I imagine things. Like you, I studied her. She wasn't lying, not like some children do for attention. There was a steadiness in her gaze, like she'd rehearsed the truth and stuck to it no matter how many grown folks doubted her." "I don't know what to make of this, Clara," I said gently, "but you sure gave me a fright." She looked up. "You don't remember Mama?" I hesitated. "I remember her. Very well. Then maybe you are my daddy," she said, as if it were that simple. I leaned back against the bench, squinting toward the hills. I'd spent the last 2 years chopping trees in the Dakota pines, running from ghosts, thinking I'd buried every part of my past that could reach out and pull me back. But here was Clara, 6 years old and sure enough of me to speak the word aloud. "I need to talk to Widow Eleanor," I murmured. Clara nodded like that was expected. She led me down Main Street, past the mercantile and the saloon with the busted swing doors, to a narrow house nestled behind a line of cottonwoods. The yard was tidy but tired, with laundry hanging stiff in the dry breeze. The kind of place that tried to look cheerful but couldn't hide its grief. Before we could knock, the front door creaked open. Widow Eleanor stood in the frame, arms folded over a faded apron. Her eyes locked onto me with the force of a judge's gavel. "You must be the man from the platform," she said. "I'm Jed Holcomb." I gathered. Her voice was flat, but her eyes were searching. "Clara, sweetheart, go wash up." Clara hesitated, glanced at me, then disappeared inside. The screen door clicked shut behind her. Eleanor stepped onto the porch. "You look just like Rose described." She ever mentioned me by name? Only once or twice. Always when she thought Clara was asleep. There was sorrow in her when she spoke of you. Said she loved a man once who went away and never wrote back. I flinched. I did right. More than once. Never heard anything after the 2nd year. Eleanor nodded slowly, arms still crossed. Life has a way of cutting lines before they're done talking. We stood in silence, the air thick with things unsaid. Finally, I asked, "Do you know for sure if Clara's mine?" "No," she admitted. "Rose never told me. Never wrote it down. I asked once, and she said it didn't matter, that the man she loved would know her when he saw her. I thought it was just dying woman talk. But Clara's been saying your name for months now. And when she saw your picture, my picture, she found one in Rose's Bible. Told me the man in the suit was her daddy." A long, slow breath escaped me. The past, once buried deep, had claws. "I don't want to confuse her," I said. "I didn't come here to start something I can't finish." Eleanor's voice softened. "Then don't start anything you can't carry to the end. Clara's got a strong heart, but it's been cracked more than once. Don't add to it." I nodded. "I won't. You plan to stay in town?" I didn't, but now I don't rightly know. She gave me a long look, then turned back toward the house. "You're welcome to visit, but tread careful, Mr. Holcomb. That child's looking for more than a shadow to follow." I watched the door close behind her and sat on the steps a while longer, trying to make sense of the ache building in my chest. I hadn't come here to be anyone's father. I came to find a wife. Instead, I found something else, maybe something more sacred. A second chance, wrapped in freckles and a yellow dress. And I wasn't sure yet if I deserved it. I began spending my mornings at Widow Eleanor's, though I never asked for permission. I just showed up, with fence tools one day, a paintbrush the next. She didn't say much about it, but she didn't stop me either. I'd fix what needed fixing, then sit with Clara under the sycamore tree out back, where the breeze could touch our faces and the past didn't hang so heavy. She asked 100 questions, what kind of animals I'd seen out west, whether I'd ever tasted snow, what my mother looked like. She wanted stories, not just answers. And I found myself giving them, without shame, without hiding the truth. Her laughter was clean and full of sunlight, and I'd begun to realize how starved I was for the sound. Still, doubt ran beneath everything. I didn't know for certain she was mine. And if I started believing too hard, if I let her believe, I'd either be giving her something solid or tearing away the last piece she had left. Eleanor watched me from the porch one afternoon, drying her hands on her apron. "You're getting attached," she said simply. I didn't deny it. "Seems like she is too." She is. Has been since the moment she saw you. But attachment is easy for children. Trust takes more. I straightened. "You don't trust me. I don't know you," she said. "But I know that girl. And if you mean to leave, I'd rather you do it now, before your shadow grows any longer. I'm not trying to hurt her." Then find out the truth, Jed. One way or another. That night, I lay awake in the room above the feed store, the mattress lumpy and the air too still. I turned the locket Clara had shown me over and over in my hands. Inside, the photo of Rose was barely more than a blur now, faded by time and worn from touch. But I knew it was her, the same way I knew that crooked smile and that quiet strength. If Clara really was mine, it changed everything. But part of me was still afraid, because once a man claims something that precious, he doesn't get to walk away without tearing himself apart. The next day, Clara and I sat beneath the sycamore again. She hummed as she tied wildflowers together in a bundle, her tongue poking from the corner of her mouth in deep concentration. "Where'd you get that locket?" I asked, watching her little fingers work. "Mama gave it to me the night she got the fever. She said, 'Don't let nobody take this, even if the sky falls.' So I didn't." I nodded. "Did she ever talk about me?" She paused, flower in hand. "Sometimes. Not a lot. Said she used to dream about you." Then she stopped because it hurt. That settled in me like a stone in deep water. I looked at her, really looked. Her jaw, her eyes, even the way she tilted her head when she was thinking, pieces of Rose were stitched into every bit of her. It wasn't proof, not the kind you could sign or stamp, but it was something older and truer than paper. Clara stood and pressed the bundle of flowers into my hands. "You look sad. Just thinking. Miss Eleanor says men think too much when they're scared." I laughed before I could stop myself. "She's not wrong. Are you scared? A little. Of Be My Daddy?" I swallowed hard. "Yeah, that too." She didn't ask anything else. Just sat down beside me and leaned her head against my arm like it was the most natural thing in the world. And maybe for her it was. Later that week, I visited the county clerk's office, a cramped room smelling of ink and old tobacco. I wasn't sure what I was hoping to find, some signature, some record, anything to tell me what my heart already whispered. The clerk, a woman named Mabel with sharp glasses and sharper wit, led me to the birth ledgers. Whitlock Rose. March 6 years back. Here she is. Gave birth in the winter. Father's name? I asked, barely breathing. She looked. Says unknown. My chest sank. "But there's a note," she added, written in the margin, in Rose's handwriting. I leaned in. "He will know her. He'll see her, and he'll know." That was all. Outside, the wind carried dust across the street, and I just stood there for a long moment, holding the truth like a fragile bone in my chest. Rose had left no name, no claim, only faith. Eleanor was sitting on the porch when I returned. She didn't rise, but her eyes narrowed slightly when she saw me. "I went to the clerk's office," I said. "There's no name listed. Just a note." Rose said I'd know. Eleanor's expression softened. She nodded once, as if that settled something between us. She believed you'd come back, she said, even when the fever was eating her up inside. I thought it was wishful thinking. Maybe it was. But now, I think maybe she saw further than the rest of us. I looked toward the backyard where Clara was turning circles in the tall grass, arms out, head tipped to the sky. She's mine, I said quietly. You sure? I'm not sure of much in this life, I said. But that little girl's got my heart, and it feels like she had it long before she ever spoke my name. Eleanor gave me a long, searching look. Then you better hold on tight, because she'll love you fierce, and she'll break if you let her fall. I won't. Good, she said, because I think you're the only one who could carry the weight of that name. The following Sunday, the town gathered for the harvest fair. Children ran wild with sticks and sugar. Women laid out pies for judging, and the air buzzed with fiddle music and gossip. I hadn't meant to stay this long in Spring Hollow, but Clara's hand in mine made the days pass different, like I wasn't drifting anymore, but rooted. We walked the fair together, her face sticky with candied apple, her boots scuffed from dancing in the dust. Every so often, someone would glance our way, eyebrows raised. I didn't blame them. The man left at the platform now had a child clinging to him like a vine on a tree. But their looks didn't shame me anymore. If anything, they settled something inside me I hadn't known was loose. Mid-afternoon, as the sun bore down, Clara pulled me toward a makeshift tent strung with quilts and curiosity. Inside sat a traveling sketch artist, charging coins to draw keepsake portraits. Clara dropped onto the stool without hesitation. You want a drawing? I asked, smiling. For us. So you don't forget what I look like if you go away again. The words stung deeper than she knew. I crouched her level. I'm not going anywhere. She squinted. Not even if some pretty lady wants to marry you. I laughed softly. Especially not then. We sat together while the artist drew, her small hand resting over mine like it belonged there. I studied the curve of her cheek, the way her lashes curled upward, and thought of all the years I'd missed. First steps, first words, birthday candles she'd blown out without me there to count. Regret had weight, but it wasn't heavier than hope. Not anymore. When the portrait was done, Clara clutched it like treasure. We look like a real family, she whispered. You are my family, I said, and this time I didn't hesitate. That night, I returned to Widow Eleanor's with purpose. The wind had turned cool, the first hint of autumn settling in. I knocked, not as a visitor this time, but as a man ready to claim what was his. She answered with a tired smile. Figured you'd be back. I want to stay, I said. For good. I'd like to make it official. She raised an eyebrow. You asking to adopt her? I'm asking for the chance to raise her. I can't replace Rose, but I can carry what she left behind. If the court needs papers, I'll sign them. If Clara needs my name, I'll give it. Eleanor stepped aside. Come in, Jed. We've got a lot to talk through. The conversation stretched deep into the night. Legal guardianship, land deeds, expectations. Through it all, I felt steady. I wasn't stepping into the unknown anymore. I was stepping into a life. Weeks passed. I found work helping the blacksmith and fixing fences for nearby farms. Claire started school, her braids bouncing as she waved goodbye each morning. The town's whispering quieted, and eventually, folks began to nod in greeting instead of gawking. One afternoon, as I waited outside the schoolhouse, a familiar figure approached from the far end of the road, Delilah Mays, the woman who had once been meant to be my bride. She looked different without the crowd, softer somehow. I heard you stayed, she said, stopping beside me. I did. Her gaze drifted toward Clara, who was chasing butterflies with two other girls. She yours? I nodded. In every way that matters. Delilah hesitated. I was scared that day. Not of you, of myself. I thought I wasn't ready to be anyone's wife. I reckon you were right, I said gently. She laughed under her breath. Looks like you ended up with something better. I followed her gaze to Clara. Yeah, I surely did. Delilah offered a small smile, then turned to go. Take care of her, Jed. I will. That evening, Clara fell asleep with the sketch artist's portrait tucked beneath her pillow. I stood in the doorway, watching the rise and fall of her breath, the way her hand still curled like it was holding onto mine. She stirred, eyes half-lidded. You're still here. I'm always going to be, I whispered. She blinked sleepily. Good. I don't like dreams where you're gone. Neither do I. Outside, the stars stretched wide across the sky. The same sky I'd slept under alone for years. Only now, it didn't feel empty. Now it felt like something was watching over us. Maybe Rose, maybe Grace. I sat by the window and opened the ledger widow Eleanor had given me. Inside was Clara's full name, written in fresh ink, Clara Rose Holcomb. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't a man looking for a home. I was one who'd found it.